But it was good to see folks at the event this week. It was Robert was there as well. Good to see you. And so I just thought this is a good thing that we do after 10X, when a whole bunch of us are there and we are able to offer our perspectives for those who weren't able to be there. And this is the first time I'm at AdvaMed, and with so many of us there, I thought that we could share what we saw and learn with the group. I'll go first. It was my first event, first time I've been to AdvaMed. It's usually it had been historically held in Boston, I think, oftentimes.
It moves around.
Sorry?
It moves around.
Does it? Okay. How many have you been to, Ross?
Oh gosh, I started going to AdvaMed when I was with Medtronic in the early 2000s, and I didn't necessarily go every year, but I would represent the Medtronic booth, or I'd be there. And then for my last company, I went often. I've probably been there 15 times in the last 25 years.
And I'd forgotten this part of your history. What did you do at Medtronic?
So at Medtronic, I was responsible for global market development. So my job was to help find and prepare global markets for Medtronic devices. So train doctors, make sure hospitals know how to do it, help them understand which patients need a pacemaker or a defibrillator or a stent or something like that.
That sounds like a big job.
It was a fun job because I got to go around the world and work with new clinics and doctors and the Medtronic staff we had on the ground there, and figure out, the healthcare system, details and nuances about how do you get a device like this to a patient that needs it.
Maren, how many would you say you've been to? I know you were with Philips, right?
No, I was with Physio Control. This was the first, this was the first AdvaMed conference I'd been to.
Oh, okay.
When MedTech Innovator was fairly young, like about 8 or 9 years ago, they came to Seattle and actually did one of their live screening events in Seattle. And they recruited judges from Wings, where I was at the time, in Life Science Washington. So I met Paul and the team then. And I have been a judge for them every year since then. So I do the flying pitch judging and sometimes do one of the Zoom sessions.
Now, of course, he was there. I saw him there. Did you have anything to do with them this year?
Yeah, so I talked to Diane, who's in charge of the judges, and apparently I was I was 7th in the number of offline applications I'd screened. So I did a fair number of them this year, and I usually do. But one of the things that Paul and I talked about, which you and I might chat about more, was he'd like to see more participation from companies in the Northwest. We have more pharma up here with at Hage and the Cancer Care Alliance and UW. But he said that it'd be good to get more device applications from the Northwest area.
That's interesting to me. What does geography mean for him? What does it matter where they come from?
I think it's more to provide encouragement to companies to apply, because they're still looking for the best companies. And if all the companies that people see in the MedTech Innovator cohort are from the East Coast or are from one area of the country, I think it tends to shut down participation from other areas.
Okay. I invited Billy to put on his camera. And Robert, you've taken yourself off camera as startups. I'm wondering if you've ever applied to the MedTech Innovator program, and if not, why not? Because at a minimum, you get some fine guidance from those who say no and why they say no. And that would be valuable, I would think, for anyone looking to raise funding. So Nigel's taken my invitation to come on camera. Perhaps they will later.
I'm here. Sorry, I'm walking a dog too myself. So
all good.
Yeah, so I actually have applied to MedTech Innovator twice.
Oh.
Yeah, so we didn't get any feedback either. So
no
reasons. No, we just get a thanks for applying thanks for coming.
Well, Myron, that's completely inconsistent with what I learned from Paul. What do you?
Yeah, so I haven't heard any feedback. And looking at the companies that tend to win, they describe the program as being for early stage companies, but if you look at the guys that win, they tend to be pretty later stage. Sometimes, a lot of times, even with something on the market. So, we're on our way, but we're not there yet. And to me, that kind of program, I don't think we're going to need it by the time we're at that point. So,
Myron, anything to say about that? I'm very surprised by what Billy's saying.
So I know when we do the judging and the offline, we are always encouraged to provide comments to the company. But if the judges that are looking at them don't provide comments, I don't think the company gets any feedback, though it sounds like Bill might have been in that situation.
Huh.
Yeah, I don't even know if whoever looks at your comments passes them on, or if they just tell everybody no. It might just be for internal review by the judges, by the final judges.
Myron, could you give Paul that note, because I don't remember how many weeks ago now, and we're approaching our 200th episode. I'll have to figure out what week that is. But some weeks back, Paul was our guest, and when he told me about this idea that anyone who applies gets feedback, I was like, what a great resource. And to learn that that's not true is rather disappointing. I would think that perhaps with prodding from one of his judges, that whomever did review Billy's things twice has notes somewhere. Perhaps we can at least help one guy with that feedback.
Yeah. When did you apply, Bill?
Well, now you've got me wondering if I actually applied this year. I definitely applied last year. We definitely applied 2000.
So you applied 2022?
Yeah, we definitely applied then. And I think I started apply. I can't remember if I hit send or not this year, or if I just said, hey, it's probably not worth it. We haven't really changed a whole lot yet, according to what the judges are looking at. So it's possible to come back and say, no, we didn't apply this year. But, just to cover my butt.
That would be a reason you didn't get feedback.
Well, last year we definitely did not get feedback. Right. Yeah, we didn't get feedback this year because we didn't apply.
How many connections? How many AdvaMeds have you attended, Jorg? Now driving his brand new Toyota. What do you have?
Lexus NX.
Right. And I was
I've only been to two.
right after his wife. He picked me up from the airport. Thank you. And we took a
welcome.
most enjoyable, most circuitous route.
I only got lost twice, but especially in a place I know very well. So I guess
You are
no
Asian.
excuse. So I've been to AdvaMed twice, but I found this one to be much more valuable than past ones. And there's just a lot of content there that's very strong. It's more content driven than trade show type driven.
For those who purchase a full pass. So my friends over at Basel Systems, I think you were each exhibitors and therefore not entitled to any of the content, or you were, but only that which was held in the exhibit hall.
So I had a full conference pass, so I can participate in all of it. And so I agree very much. AdvaMed is a content-rich program. And if you're a small company like many of us are, we're there to meet people and connect and network, and you get a good but small fraction of the attendees that come through the expo floor. And so I've always found it important to have at least one person with full pass, because you're going and you're meeting people in the rooms and in the hallways and at the beginning and end of the sessions. Plus the sessions often have good information. So if you do participate in AdvaMed, I would recommend at least one person have full access, just because you'll come into contact with people that don't spend much time on the expo floor.
Do you find that you do that?
I did that the entire time. Yes.
No, pardon me. My question is, do you find that few attendees go on the expo floor and they just go to the sessions, or vice versa, or?
Yeah, I mean, if you are in the med tech space, you're there for the content. Most people will tour the floor, look around, do things. But for example, Medtronic, Boston Scientific, Edwards, there were people there, but they didn't have booths
Right.
on the floor. So they're not. So you can't go up to a Medtronic booth and say, "Hey, is such and such person here?"
Right.
So yeah, so most people are there for the content, and then the expo is, the side show, and you'll get some access there, but you'll get more access if you can participate fully.
As an exhibitor, did Basal Systems get a list of people who register for the event?
On the app, you can see all of the attendees. Yes.
Yep.
Mhm.
And is that a meaningful lead generation tool for you?
It was indeed very helpful. So we could look and see, well, okay, even though Edwards doesn't have a booth here, there's 4 or 5 or 8 people from Edwards here. Let's keep our eye out for them. Let's see if we can, track down the one we want to talk to. So yes, the list in the app was very helpful.
So did you reach out to people at Edwards and say, hey, I see that you're at the show, please visit booth 317?
We did some of that, limited, but because people reach out to me a lot, and they're very poor connections, they're low quality, and so we try to be selective in our proactive outreach and try and catch people live. That works really well.
Did you find that, do you have an estimate of, you reached out to 10 people, how many of them actually said, hey, thanks for messaging me, here I am? Like, do you know if it
very that's why we don't do, because very few respond favorably, if at all. Because you're reaching out through the app. I mean, if you reach out through LinkedIn or something else, say, hey, we're going to be there, you've got a chance. That's kind of a normal networking. If you reach out through the app, it's a very low hit rate, response rate.
Like, did any?
Mike did it more than I did. I didn't get any on the couple that I messaged. I don't know if Mike got any.
Anthony, Caitlin, anybody?
No, it would have been Mike. It was just the two of us.
Okay. How many, so among those on this call, you're the only one that had a booth. What was your, and did Basal go last year, or was this your first?
Yes. No, Basal went last year as well.
How was the performance this year versus last? Or how was the crowd this year versus last?
I would say it was slightly better than last year. Last year was also good. So
Better in terms
AdvaMed,
of quantity or quality, or both?
I'm sorry?
Quantity, quality, or both, when you say better?
I'll say a little bit better on both. I don't have the actual attendance numbers. I think we benefited also from more name recognition after another year on the market, and having been there the first year. We do put a booth up because we find it's really essential that people simply see what we do versus talking about it. So our booth is a demo station, and that works well for our particular business. But yeah, quality and quantity both, I'd say we're a little bit better. It might just be because of where we're at in the market right now.
Mm-hmm.
In the early years, when I went in past years, I think we didn't get as much traffic on the expo floor. I think AdvaMed has done a little better job in moving activity and events onto the expo floor, which brings people down there. And so there's
the lunch is all the way in the back, and you have
the little live theaters that you got to walk through the floor to get to the lunch and that kind of stuff.
They had 3 live theaters, or 3 areas on the exhibition floor where they were doing regular discussions and regular talks.
Right.
And I was continually going back through the exhibit hall because that was where the talks were going on that I wanted to see.
Where were the other talks?
Well, there was the MedTech Innovator area. So
Right.
as you
Now,
went
I know
into
that
the
there was one
conference
on the
hall,
other side. There was
on there.
The main content
And
was upstairs
then-
in all the big meeting rooms.
right. But then there was the innovator stage. And then there was it was just south of the student area. It was the CEO discussions.
How many, so I didn't have a full access pass. I imagine that the lunchroom was the largest of the rooms.
Yes.
Everyone went to have
Yes.
lunch once. How many would you estimate, Ross, were in that room? 1,000?
Yes, I'd say about 1,000. That's a very rough guess.
Okay. And who spoke at lunch? Did you go to either?
CEO of Medtronic, J&J Healthcare, and was it
Striker.
Stryker, yeah.
And then the breakfast the last day was FDA,
CDRH forum.
CDRH,
Jeff Shuren. So that's an annual routine, and they did it in the morning, which was nice. Usually the very last event on the last day is the CDRH open house, FDA open house. And that's not the right forum. Mm-hmm. And they did it in the morning, which was nice. And it's always good because you've got Jeff Shuren giving an update and then access to him and his staff for Q&A.
and some of the staff were on smaller panels upstairs too.
Mm-hmm.
The digital health guy was upstairs at a session that I went to after the breakfast.
Maren, what was most useful, incremental, or new for you at the show this year?
So my focus when I was going down, I got an investor pass, which is nice to have, and it was a full pass. But I was really looking to screen companies for feeding into Alliance of Angels and seeing which companies were new. So I had, I think, at least 10 different people reach out and set up meetings with entrepreneurs and founders, including Sukar. And I spent some time wandering around the innovation area and looking at some of the new products coming up as well. And then just some of the content from the sessions was particularly interesting to see. Did not realize that AdvaMed had such a strong focus on including people of color, including women, and including veterans in getting into the medical startup community. And so those groups seem to be very active, and I appreciate that diversity.
Nice. Okay. And Ross?
What did I find uniquely useful this time?
Versus previous years.
I mean, like I said, I think they're doing much better now than they were 10 years ago, getting people to interact on the floor. So I really appreciate that. I'm going to give a really dumb little tactical thing. But in my situation with the booth and people coming through, and you don't want to, if there's a promising conversation, you don't want to fumble the lead. We do pay the extra, whatever it is, $700 or $900 for the lead capture app, because you don't have to guess at their email. I've had people in past shows come up and you take a picture of the badge, and then guess what? You can't find their email. It's just not worth it. So we picked up 93 new leads and contacts with full name, title, company, everything using that app. And I think we would have been hard pressed to get half of them, because they're inclined to move along. They don't want to give you a card or whatever, but they are willing to let you just say, yeah, keep in touch. So we pay for the app.
And you did that last year, or you did not?
We did it last year as well, but in other conferences we have not, and I've regretted it.
Well, I'm curious to know, you did it last year. Were you able to convert any of the leads from last year?
As a matter of fact, we did, and we're very optimistic about this year. But our J&J account came from a conversation that started last year, for example.
Big account for you.
Big account.
It was way worth it.
Way worth it.
Yeah. Okay. Jorg, you've been coming on and off. I'd like to hear your perspective on this year's show, because I know that you also had a full pass and you made your way to a lot of the content, if you're able to, or if you're using your new navigation system to find your way home or to work. I'm not sure. Robert, you were there only for the dinner that we had to get together, or were you there for other events as well? Mr. Harmon, you are on mute. You're still on mute? There we go.
Sorry, Joe.
Good to see you and Joan there.
Yes, thanks for inviting us. That's the first time I ever heard of that event. So that was the first time going. I wouldn't even known about it had you not invited us at the last online meeting. I didn't know about it. So next time they have it, I'll make sure that I have passes to attend the whole event.
So you were only there for our get together?
That's correct.
Well, the food was great. What did you think? Did you make any connections there? Was that valuable?
It was. Yeah, we made some good connections. So one of the gentlemen there was representing a trade ambassador from Ireland. And so yeah, he was schmoozing me like, why don't we build our plant in Ireland? Like there's lots of economic incentives to go to Ireland. So that was nice talking to him. Talking to some FDA people, cultivated some good relationships with them. We've always had good interactions with the FDA, so it was nice to actually see them for the first time in the flesh.
Mhm.
And it was really insightful hearing the panelists, because after listening to their stories, I realized Joan and I are a lot further along than we realized. We're actually very close. We've actually gone all the way through it, and we're at one of the last gates. So that was very reassuring that we've done a lot. So it was good to be amongst our peers.
Did you hear anything in the panel that was insightful or helpful?
I think what was most insightful is that the path that they've been traveling, the path that they've been on, my wife and I have been on the same path, and we're pretty far down the path. And that there's definitely, how would they say, a road to victory, So that was very insightful, very reassuring, because a lot of times, bootstrapping a startup for 13 years is exhausting, living like Spartans and just trying to do everything we can to do everything ourselves. And after hearing their stories, we've done everything they've done with, just bootstrapping. So that was very good. And some other business contacts to help us with our final steps to marketization and commercialization.
Maren and Ross, it's harder for me as the moderator, and I've got my how to keep this entertaining for an hour and stuff mind going. Did you pick up any tidbits there that you found insightful, helpful, or new? No is a fair answer.
I thought the AI, the talk about the AI was very good too.
Which talk about AI? There were several.
Just the general discussion of how they're all embracing it or fearful of it, or some people they're not as concerned about it, and some people are super concerned about it. There's still a lot of variability in people's opinions about AI, so the verdict's still out, and I think that's kind of nice too, because there's a lot of variability in people's opinions, and there's nothing that's really becoming like prevailing common wisdom yet. It's still up in the air. The verdict's still out. So that was insightful, just that fact alone.
The number of startup companies that were there. It always surprises me how many startup companies are in the medical device space. I mean, the cohort that was selected for going through the incubator program was 60 companies, all of which had pretty good progress and pretty good stories, and I was impressed with. But the number of companies that applied this year was over 1,000.
Wow.
So that's a lot of companies, and there are companies that don't apply to MedTech Innovator. So just the number of startup medical companies that are out there always surprises me every year. I know that I don't think he's on the call this morning, but Marvin was there also.
Right.
And I think it was really helpful for him, even though he wasn't part of the cohort or anything like that, but just to go and hear the information. So it really is a pretty valuable resource for startup companies to hear about what's going on, to learn about, and to make contacts with people. At breakfast, the FDA breakfast on the last morning, the gentleman I sat next to happens to be the head of the NIH branch that does cancer and oncology. So he's the one that sees all the grants for the SBIR grants for cancer products. And it's like, here's my card, connect. And, if you have any questions, give me a call. Somebody mentioned the FDA people. They were great to talk to, very approachable. Here's my card, give me a call, connect with me. So I think sometimes we look at, particularly startups, look at these people that are in the positions of power as unapproachable, or, how would I ever make contacts with them? And I think pretty much everybody that I saw there said, connect with me, here's my card, give me a call, let me know if you have questions. And from my perspective, having been working in the industry for 30 years and seeing what FDA panels used to look like in terms of, I'm just going to answer your question and stay out of my face.
You had some fun with FDA at
the whole culture shift to be more collaborative, to be willing to sit on a panel, to have people ask you really tough questions, it was really refreshing to that.
Okay, we're fun in the audience. You'll recall I gave the mic to someone. I say, say who you are and where you're from. And he said his name, and I said, and where you're from. He says, I'd rather not say.
Yeah.
And I took the mic away from him. But then he confessed he was with FDA and
Cisco, right?
Cisco.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until after the event that I realized that 5 years ago, I moderated a webinar series of 4 events with him that I'd forgotten. But it was good to reconnect with him. And both he and Daniel said that they would not only join us here, but likely come to 10X. So that would be nice to have their participation. They emphasized exactly that point, how they want to make FDA more approachable. So I thought that was a nice effort on their part. Luke, before I give you the mic, I'd like to ask for the rest of those on camera and perhaps those off, you can leave a comment. Have you ever been to AdvaMed, the MedTech conference? And if not, what you'd want to know or ask or learn to determine whether or not it's worth you ever going. Luke?
Sorry, no, I still had a question for Maren. What percentage of companies were on software and which were on physical devices?
The new ones, you mean, of the 1,000 or so?
Yeah.
Since this conference is intentionally a medical devices conference, just thinking about what was in the innovation space, I would say it was probably 75% or so, some type of hardware. And there were maybe 25% of the products that were software only.
Okay.
And the products ranged, some were strictly mechanical. There's a company out of Canada making a product that is injecting an anticoagulation medication for trauma. Company's name is Mach 32. Like no software, nothing like that. It's all interventional. There was also intersection, like, and I love when these kinds of things happen. So I talked to Mach 32 the first day of the conference, was really interested in what they were doing. It's pre-hospital trauma space, which is where I came from. My last meeting of the conference was set up from a company named Armor, ARMR, and they're making a device that soldiers would wear, and it's a battlefield tourniquet. So if you're injured, you've already got the tourniquet on and you can deploy it and wear it. And I was looking at him and he went, oh yeah, I went to Seattle. I met him in 2018 when he pitched his product for wings. And so we reconnected and did that. And then my first question to him was, have you talked to Mach 32? And he had just met them. So it's one of those places where companies that are in like spaces can make connections as well, and work with other founders. There's a lot of emphasis on founder discussions and founder connections.
If I can give a little context also, the emphasis on innovation and the support of that ecosystem is a newer thing for AdvaMed. So maybe since some people aren't familiar with AdvaMed, maybe a little bit of broader context. AdvaMed used to be, and it still is, the industry association for the big medtech companies. It's why the Medtronics and the Abbotts and the Edwards and the Baxters participate. The CEOs will show up for panels and things like this. So it's the big guys. And then there's another organization, if you're not familiar with it, MDMA, Medical Device Manufacturers Association. Those were the little and mid-sized guys. The big guys sometimes participate in that as well. So there's two conferences in the medtech space that I encourage you to at least be familiar with. And then there's a number of other smaller and specialized ones. So AdvaMed kind of 10 plus years ago realized there's a lot of innovation in our space and we should try and, support that and maybe own part of it. And so AdvaMed Excel is a subset, which is kind of like small mid-sized companies, the innovation panels, the reaching out, the color breakfast, reaching out to people. So there's a lot of good stuff that AdvaMed has been doing, and I applaud their efforts. But it still attracts the big guys. So that's nice. And I think I just wanted to, that's the context if you're not familiar with where this all came from. It is a medical device. The fact that 25% or so is about software, that was unheard of 5-7 years ago. But a lot of questions that we got, when we were doing our demos were around software as a medical device. So there's a number of innovators that are looking at that space.
Mark, you say that you went when it was held in Minneapolis, which of course was convenient for you. Would you say that sorry?
Yeah, it was like in 2016 or something.
And did you find it only marginal, so that if it were convenient for you to go to, you'd go again, but otherwise not really worth it for you? Why did you only go the once?
I think it was because it was mostly focused on the large companies at that point, and there were interesting programs and I learned a lot, but it wasn't like it was focused on what I was working with.
Mm-hmm.
So
if yours is more of a broad consulting role now, is that not?
Yeah, and I work with early stage companies, helping them with their business development and strategies and directions. So
Mark, have you gone to MDMA?
No, actually, that I haven't been to. Usually I go there. Usually I go to these shows with somebody. I mean, that's my main focus. Although AdvaMed, I'd gone just on my own back in 2016 because it was there. So I learned a lot, but I think it would be great to have some of the developments that you're describing focused on the early stage companies, because that's the connections that we need to make, and the big companies need that too.
Ross, do you think that Andre, as a contract manufacturer, would have benefited from having a booth, or no, he was right not to go?
The small companies that are there, and maybe others have a comment on this, I don't know if they're expecting to find services useful to them. They may not be. I think they're there to spread their message to maybe the mid and big size companies and the investors and such that are walking it. So it might not be a service that people would be looking for, but I would look at MDMA as well, which is a little bit smaller and, not as far, but it's an active and long lived. It's been around for a long time organization.
MDMA, when is it? I'm looking.
Medical Device Manufacturers Association. I'd have to look up.
There were certainly other companies there that were medical device manufacturers or design firms. Fewer design firms that I saw. I think most of them were manufacturers. I was just looking to see if Jorg was still on to get his opinion on that.
MDMA is in the spring, I believe.
I'm just putting in the chat for
Is
everyone. I just
MDMA the one that runs with Westpac and Plastech in Anaheim? Based
put
on
a link there.
Not
and
familiar with that. There's a little bit of
No.
confusion because there's like an MD&M, medical device and manufacturing, medical design and manufacturing, which is a smaller one here in Minneapolis, or maybe it does a
Yeah,
couple.
that
Well,
was
there's-
just
Yeah.
actually at the same time now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
MDM.
was. Mhm.
Yeah, so
Yeah, and I was there.
MDM is different, and the big one is in Anaheim coming up in February
For MD&M.
for MDNM,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah, there's MDNM
Yeah,
West.
Which is different than MDNMA that you guys are speaking.
yeah, that's the one I just shared in the group.
Two different
That's why I
things.
was trying to understand, because we go to MDM in my field, but not to MDMA or AdvaMed. So
There was a packaging company there, Jan.
I don't
At
even know
the-
what they do. We were trying to figure it out with the group of other packaging engineers I work with. Who was it? Do you know?
I have to go back and take a look, but I remember walking by and looking at their booth a little bit.
I just shared in the chat a link I have on my 10X site. There's a complimentary events calendar that typically has about 80 events chronologically listed. So you're welcome to click on that and see if there are any there that you feel are worth your attention. Mark Willett in particular, you'll probably find some that are more
Mhm.
suitable for your target space.
Okay.
With my medication's beginning to wear off, I'm ready to either crash or cough. Before I do, though, Ross, can you tell me anything that you gleaned about the composition of the folks there based on the demos that you gave, the questions that they asked, any insights to share with the group?
Not so much about that they're all asking about their specific subject space, you know, because of the FDA presence. And I want to echo Marin's point that FDA has used for years AdvaMed and other conferences, I think kind of following Jeff Shuren's lead to demonstrate that they're human beings and that they are a service organization. And yeah, you got to jump through their hoops, but they are actually hoping you do it successfully and are trying to help. So they've been successful in demonstrating that they're approachable. Other than so there's always that opportunity to work with them. Other than that, you know, I didn't really pick up any trends, and I'll confess, even when I'm going in and around the sessions, I'm more interested in who's in the session and who's around me than I am in the content. So I apologize for not being more attentive to the content being discussed.
Sure, that makes sense. Okay, well, are there any other questions? I'm not at my quick best that you'll appreciate with a little bit of COVID-addled brain. Anything for the
So
anyone want to share?
next year the conference will be in Toronto, and
Okay.
it's October 15th through 17th. If
Okay.
anybody's interested in putting that on their calendar. And you can also get to the conference information if you want to take a look and see what the agenda was and see what the topics were. So if you're interested in seeing what type of information they were discussing, that information's available too.
Thank you, Marin.
Yeah, I keep getting so surprised with how much packaging is ignored in startup companies. And when it comes to trying to ship something somewhere, they go, oh my God, what are we doing here? So it might be nice to have something to tell people about them, about
Yeah,
packaging.
I don't recall having seen anything about packaging there, which doesn't surprise you terribly. Disappoints, perhaps, not surprise. Next week, my friend Tiger Buford, I thought he'd be on today's call, but I know he had a conflict, is a 30-some-odd year recruiter in the ortho space. So if your business touches contracts, services, or potentially sees partnership with the ortho world, that will be a valuable session for you. And honestly, I can't remember the following week. I'm just ready to take a nap. So for those of you who don't have COVID, I'm glad. And I got nothing. I'll see you next week.
Feel
Bye.
better, Joe.
Yep.